Hey there, friends. I did a video on Alan Coley, who was the guy who was approached and somewhat bullied by the YouTube Prankster guy and shot him and ended up getting off with a self-defense claim, however, getting convicted of firing a gun inside an occupied place, which is absolutely stupid. But nevertheless, I'm not an attorney. I can recognize when things are stupid. I don't have to be an attorney for that. But there's a lot being said about that, and a lot of you guys have drawn my attention to the fact that Coley was alleged to be a USCCA member, and there was different allegations floating around out there that USCCA had dropped him, that they had left him hanging, different things like that. I was like, you know what, this is interesting to me because for a couple of reasons. One, I am a USCCA member. I have been since, according to this, 2016. You can see on my little card right there. USCCA doesn't pay me a penny. I don't receive any money from USCCA. I'm actually, other than being a member, I'm a big fan of their magazine. They do have a magazine that comes out. I don't know if this thing is monthly or how often it comes out. The magazine is good. Their emails are annoying. And I say that with all due respect to them because I know they're trying to help, I suppose, and gain business, of course. I'm not stupid. Actually, Tim Smith, who's their owner or CEO, I'm not sure what his role is, I had to put his emails coming from him into my spam folder, junk folder, whichever, because I got too many of them. It was junk. I felt like I was being abused as being a member. So again, emails, bad. Magazine, good. Coverage, not sure. Because it does appear that Mr. Alan Coley was covered, I shouldn't say that, was a member of USCCA whenever this shooting took place. And I ran across a YouTube page. Let's see, the name of the page is Attorneys on Retainer. Again, Attorneys on Retainer is the name of the YouTube channel. And these two attorneys reached out to the public defender, not a USCCA attorney, but a public defender, who defended Mr. Coley in this case and got him off on the main conviction, but still got the conviction of the firing a pistol or a handgun or a weapon in an occupied place. Here's the video of what they describe, and I'll come back and give you my breakdown of what they said.
This video is more about the questions that we've had in terms of what USCCA has done here. And let's say right at the beginning, we don't know for sure, right? We haven't spoken with Mr. Coley. I did speak with his public defender, Mr. Adam Pouliard. I had a personal conversation with him, and I specifically, after congratulating him on doing such a good job on this case, very hard case at trial, I asked him, was your client, Mr. Coley, a USCCA member?
Let's pause right there. I want to go back to how we actually found out about this, right? Yeah. Because it came up in a court filing.
That's right.
The prosecutor filed something to ask the judge to allow the state to present evidence to the jury at trial that right after the shooting, Mr. Coley immediately made a phone call to the United States Concealed Carry Association.
From his speed dial, which he had programmed.
From his speed dial.
Yeah.
And, of course, the prosecutor wanted to present this to the jury to show that he had some sort of knowledge or guilt or something like that, or try to make a negative spin on it, right?
Yeah.
Now, the judge did end up denying that motion, but the judge did not rule on that motion on the merits. In other words, the judge didn't actually analyze the legal arguments made by the prosecutor or the opposition made by the defense. Rather, the judge denied it because it was untimely.
Right.
There's certain time restraints regarding motions, and you got to file it by a certain time. The prosecutor missed it, and so it got denied.
That's how we found out, and I think other people found out, that this guy, Mr. Coley, was a USCCA, or at least appears to have been a USCCA member, and he wound up with a public defender. How did that happen?
How did that happen? So that raises the issue of your phone call with him.
Yeah. So I call Mr. Pouliard, the public defender who did such a nice job on this case, and among other things, I specifically asked him, was your client a USCCA member? And he said, yes, he was. I said, well, do you know why you're on the case? He said, I don't really know about that. So what I did was I did some research. I wasn't familiar with the USCCA, so I looked on their website. I found out that they excluded criminal acts, and I figured this coverage was just for civil, and I think very reasonably, right? Because they say they exclude criminal acts, and he concluded that this is simply a matter for civil coverage and didn't think anything of it, didn't push it any further, and we moved on in our conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Mr. Coley was represented by the public defender, which again shows you that he didn't have a lot of money, was not represented by USCCA. There are obviously reasons why. I think the video I'm about to show you may explain a little bit of that, but still very, very vague. But clearly these guys reached out to the public defender. It sounds like the public defender is not real sure what USCCA's role might or should have been either way. Seems like it's just one of those things. But it does sound like they're confirming the fact that Mr. Coley was in fact a USCCA member, a paying member. They're not saying why USCCA did not represent him. Not sure what's behind that, but clearly he had the same card that I have, because on the back of the card it tells you what you're supposed to say if you're involved in some kind of a self-defense shooting. So it does sound like Coley was covered, if you want to call it that, by USCCA at the time. Now since then, which this really surprised me, I don't know what the whole reasoning behind it is. To me, it was somewhat suspect. When you're dealing with legal issues, sometimes it's better just not to say anything. But my guess is USCCA was probably receiving a lot of flack as a result of, if nothing else, the allegations coming out. Again, a company can get blistered and hammered pretty hard when they've not done anything wrong. Not saying they did or they didn't. I'm just saying doesn't have to be truth to the accusation for a company to get hammered. This is proven time and time again on social media. So sometimes my feeling is you just let it go. Let them do their thing. If you've done nothing wrong, whatever. But maybe it was hurting their bottom line. Potentially there were people that were ending their memberships with USCCA. So the owner or CCO, again, I don't know what Tim Schmidt's role is. I know he's pretty high up there at USCCA. He came out with this video. Now I'm going to break this video down into several different parts. Again, with all due respect to Tim is a salesman and spent about half of this video convincing you that USCCA is the better product out there. Again, I understand that and I respect that, but that's not what I'm here for, is to sell you on USCCA. So I broke out the pertinent things that he had to say about the coverage in general with USCCA, and more specifically, he did very briefly touch on the Alan Coley case. Again, very briefly, and you'll see that. Let me get through these clips, and I'm going to give you my take on each one of these clips as we go through it.
One crazy lie is the USCCA and the insurance carrier that issues a self-defense liability insurance policy will drop you if you're charged with a crime. This is absurd. This policy absolutely covers criminal charges. I mean, that's the whole point. You'll likely never even need this insurance unless you're being charged with a crime after defending yourself.
Now, he makes a good point. The whole purpose of having this coverage is that you are likely going to be charged if you have a shoot in self-defense. Not guaranteed, but it's very possible. I mean, if you've just shot somebody, God forbid you've murdered them, which did not happen in this case, you're probably going to be charged until you go to court or whatever. So he makes a very valid point that USCCA's policy is what he's saying, that it can't possibly be that they won't cover you if you're charged with a criminal offense. So I have to kind of side with him there. However, I have not. The contract is long, so I'm going to go through the contract. I'm going to try to find it as best as I can what he's talking about, and I'll share that with you guys in a future video. But he does make a very valid point that, well, of course it's going to cover you if you're charged criminally. They assume that's probably going to be the case in so many of the cases that they'll have coverage on.
The insurance company could make the decision to not cover a claim if there is clear evidence that the member did not act in self-defense. If the facts of the case can at all be construed as potentially being a covered self-defense incident, the insurance company has to provide coverage, or else they'd be in breach of contract. Heck, if that ever happens, they'd be inviting a lawsuit to remind them and us what we're here for.
Now, he makes a couple of important points here. First of all, where he talks about if there's clear evidence that you did not act in self-defense, well, isn't that the purpose of the court system, right? In other words, how do you know that if the trial hasn't taken place yet? Again, that being the purpose of the trial. So I guess I'm a little bit confused. Would USCCA not get involved until after the trial and reimburse money? my thought was that they provided you that assistance during the trial process. Again, these are all questions that I have, not saying that Tim or USCCA is wrong. I'm just saying that is a question mark for me. So you're telling me if there's clear-cut evidence that the person didn't act in self-defense, so wouldn't that be an opinion? Like in this case, when you look at it, people are split on Alan Coley's decision here. They think that, a lot of people think that yes, the YouTube prankster did not have the right to bully and keep entering and pushing and forcing his way into this guy's personal space. But Coley, some people think that he overreacted also. So is this an opinion that somebody can make prior to a trial to not cover somebody? Again, that's just a big question that I have. But Tim also makes a very valid point following that if this company, USCCA in this case, simply doesn't cover someone who should have been covered, then he's pointing this out. This is not us having to say this. He's pointing this out, that USCCA would be charged with a breach of contract. So, I mean, this guy's volunteering that information that, hey, we wouldn't do this because it's stupid. We'd be in breach of contract and we would lose that. So, again, very valid point that he makes here.
The insurance company is required by law to not cover someone if it's 100% crystal clear that they did not act in self-defense in any way. Now, most of the time, this can only happen with that final, unappealable criminal conviction. Until then, until that moment, they are fighting alongside you with the assumption that you're innocent until proven guilty.
Now, again, notice he said that they would be fighting alongside you until it gets to a point where the decision can't be appealed. Well, this decision can be appealed. So is he saying that after the appeal, a decision is made? Because he's also saying that until that unappealable decision is made, that they would be fighting alongside you. In this case, it doesn't seem like they are fighting alongside Mr. Coley or have fought alongside Mr. Coley. Now, he does reference how they will be involved, I believe, in the appeal process a little bit later on in the video, but I really wanted you guys to see that portion of it because, as again, those are question marks to me. And these are all things that I'm going to reach out to USCCA on, by the way. I'm going to give them an opportunity to clear it up in my mind because I don't feel like I understand the process enough to say this is emphatically what has or hasn't happened. I'm just trying to disseminate the information at this point.
An insurance policy is a legal contract, and the USCCA's insurer is legally bound in a unilateral, aleatory way to provide you with the coverage that we said we would.
Again, Tim is volunteering information that if they were trying to run from this case, just my opinion, he wouldn't be doing this. Right, you understand what I'm saying? He's making the case that other people would make if they were trying to run from this case. So, again, either he would be really stupid by offering up some of these things, or he's serious about what their involvement has been up to this point, and they are not trying to abandon one of their members. Now, this is the final clip of the video, and this is a pretty interesting clip here. I want you to watch this.
There has also been a lot said about an ongoing matter involving USCCA member Alan Coley. Now, we can't comment on an ongoing criminal matter, but Mr. Coley has not been, nor was he ever dropped by either the USCCA or the insurance company. And on appeal, he will be represented by an appellate attorney whose fees are being paid for by the insurance company as part of his USCCA member benefits.
So although, according to this clip right here, although he's not been helped by USCCA up till now, it sounds like in the appeal process, there will be attorney funding or coverage of some sort that USCCA will be involved in, which obviously means that, as we all suspected, Alan Coley is in fact a USCCA member. He must be in good standing with them. In other words, he's up to date on his dues, his payments on his dues, because they will be involved. So I think the one thing we can certainly emphatically say at this point is that Alan Coley was in fact, and probably is still in fact, a USCCA paying member. And according to this video, he's going to receive some sort of benefit up to this point. Now, still a whole lot of question marks out there. This video is not to bash USCCA or any other insurance coverage provider out there. There are so many different ones. And this is also not to support them. I'm trying to be as unbiased as I can. Again, I am a customer of theirs, if anything else. I certainly don't receive payment from them and don't have a problem with them, obviously, or I wouldn't be a member. But either way, I don't have an affiliation with them, I guess is my point. However, there's a lot of different companies out there. I would say this, certainly do your research. If you're thinking about signing up for one, there are some that are insurance companies that provide coverage. There are some who are attorneys for hire. There is a difference. And again, we can get into that in another video, but they're not all the same. Like when you put them side by side and you look at them, they offer different wordings as to what they provide for very specific reasons. Because again, some of them specifically are just an insurance company. And I have to say this, insurance companies do not exist to help you. Insurance companies exist to give you coverage if they have to. And again, this is not a representation or a knock at anyone like USCCA or any other insurance companies out there. But there is not an insurance company that has ever existed in the history of man that was 100% doing it for the betterment and the good of their members. They're just not. It's a profit center for them. Car insurance. If they really wanted to, and home insurance, a perfect example is Hurricane Laura. There's still people in litigation suing insurance companies that did not want to bring their house up to standing. People get in car accidents and they have to fight for the proper repairs on their vehicles. Why? It's not because the insurance companies are refusing them coverage. The insurance company is wanting to pay out as little as possible because there is a bottom line involved. This is not a non-profit company, an insurance company. They are a for-profit company. Their goal is to pay out as little as possible on legitimate claims. Again, a legitimate claim. They're going to pay out, right? They acknowledge that, and they will do that. But they're not going to open the checkbook up and just let you dive in. They are going to try to limit as much exposure as they have financially in every single case. That's why they have adjusters and don't just allow you to turn in receipts, right? Your adjuster takes your receipts, usually comes back and says this is too much money. Otherwise, if they cared about us and they really wanted to do everything that would make us whole again, they would simply take our receipts. Now, I know there's a certain level of fraud that's going to be involved too. That's a totally different story. But again, if they really wanted to make us whole without pushing back and trying to limit that coverage, they would just receive receipts in most cases and just cut you a check. And they don't do that. Whereas attorneys who might be getting retained, like if a company, one of those companies out there that offers this type of coverage, actually is a team of attorneys, those attorneys, their goal is to get you off. Now, granted, they may want to limit the amount of hours that they charge because there's a bottom line involved also, but nevertheless, their business model isn't necessarily to give you as little as possible. Their goal, they want to win. Their team of attorneys want to win those instances. So I think that's very important to point out while you're doing your search to find which of these companies is best for you. I'm going to dig a little bit more. Again, I'm not trying to get USCCA in trouble. In fact, I'm based on what Tim Schmidt has said here on behalf of USCCA, I tend to believe that maybe they're more in the right than what we think they are. But quite possibly there's just some of it that they can't talk about. And I always hate when somebody references this is an ongoing case so we can't talk about it. I absolutely hate that because in a lot of cases that gives somebody the cover to lie to you and not tell you the full truth. But in this case, if they really are involved in that appeal process, well, clearly he can't talk about this case. Tim Schmidt can't talk about this on behalf of USCCA because it's an ongoing case, and we know it's going to get appealed, and hopefully it's appealed, and hopefully they're successful in appealing to get that charge of shooting inside an occupied building struck down, because that's an absolutely ridiculous charge. So more on this as it comes about. I just felt like with USCCA putting an official statement out, which really surprised me, I do think two things happened. I think they cleared up a lot of things, but I think they also created a lot of question marks out there and more questions that I want to be answered for sure. So I will be reaching out to them. Again, I don't have a relationship with USCCA either way, positive or negative. I'm a customer of theirs. So I feel like I can reach out to them from an unbiased standpoint to try to get some good information. And hopefully they will be forthcoming with that information. Guys, please check to make sure you're still subscribed. Obviously, YouTube is playing games, and I'm not one of the winners of the games. They are taking subscribers of mine off on a regular, even hourly basis. I can watch that subscriber count go down as my views and shares and interactions go up. Doesn't make sense. You should not have subscriber rate going down like this while you have your everything else, every other measurable thing going up like that. So YouTube's playing that game. So please make sure you're still subscribed. If you're not, please resubscribe. Please ask your friends and your family to subscribe also. I would really appreciate that. Hope you guys have a great Christmas, great holiday season, whatever you want to call it. I call it Christmas in my house. And have a safe one, an enjoyable one, and enjoy your friends and family. And think about those who have less than you during this holiday season, because there's some people out there struggling in this hard economy that we have right now. So a hat tip to everybody out there who's looking out for somebody else.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.